Okay, sections 11 and 12 in the reading packet for this week, what would be this week if we were in class, and then everybody should be ready to do exam number 3 because that exam is over sections 9, 10, 11, and 12. Remember, the exams are now open book and open note. You log on with the access code unexpected and you just take the exam. You have 3 hours like usual, just as if you were at the testing center, but you can use your reading packet and any other notes. So, section 11, juvenile delinquency. I hate to brag, but I might know more about this than anyone that you might encounter, not because I was a juvenile delinquent, but because that's what I've been doing for over 20 years now, working with kids in the juvenile justice system. So, first of all, what I want you to know, nearly every state defines a juvenile the same way with regard to court proceedings. You are at least 8 years old, but you are not yet 18 years old, between 8 and 18. Arizona is like most other states where you cannot be arrested unless you're 8 years old, no matter what you do. Sure, you could be taken from your parents, put in foster care, but 8 years old is the minimum to be arrested. Nationwide, 3% of kids have juvenile court records. That means 97% of kids do not get arrested. In Arizona, that number is slightly higher, closer to 4%, like 3.8%, but it's still a relatively low number. Males outnumber females. 80% of kids that get arrested are males, only 20% are females. Those are not exact numbers, but it's approximately 4 out of 5 males. What's the difference between juvenile court or adult court? Well, a lot actually. First of all, juveniles do not get locked up for the same things that adults do. It's much more common to give them what we call diversion, programs to help them, give them probation, things where they can remain at home with their families. Whereas adults, more common that you get locked up and put in jail or prison. Also, juveniles are given far more chances than adults are. You might get some sort of minor consequence, whereas adults, it could be your first time and you get in serious trouble for the same thing. Most states do not use juries for juveniles. Can you imagine that? You're a 10-year-old and you get arrested for shoplifting or breaking into a car or a house, and the jury is 12 kids your age? Doesn't make sense, does it? It's usually what we call a bench trial with the judge and the regular courtroom personnel, but no juries. Finally, very common in juvenile cases to offer them a plea bargain. Will you accept a lesser charge if you admit to it? That way we don't have to have a formal hearing to prove guilt or innocence. Next thing, theories. Why do some kids become juvenile delinquents? Only 3% nationwide? It's slightly higher than that, like 3.2%, but just know these numbers. On average, 3% nationwide, 4% in Arizona. Slightly off, but still, those are the numbers to know. So, 3 psychological disorders that we see in the court system. ADD, attention deficit disorder. Kids who act before they think, that's a problem. You need to think before you act. Oppositional defiant disorder, bad attitude, nobody's going to tell you what to do, that's oppositional defiant disorder. But those kids do not get arrested nearly as much as those who have conduct disorder. They lack a conscience like they should have. They don't seem to mind acting in a manner that violates the law and the rights of other people. There's a bug. Property damage, hurting people, bullying younger kids, that is conduct disorder. Just my luck, there's a little flea flying around here while I'm talking to you. Anyway, that's the theory of psychological disorders. You can explain juvenile delinquency by the name of the condition that the kid has, the disorder, the diagnosis. Rational choice. This is the simplest theory, if you ask me. You decided to do that. You made a choice. If there was a police officer standing next to you, I bet you wouldn't have acted that way. John Douglas points that out in the book, The Theory of Rational Choice. It's a conscious decision. There's that bug again. Moving right along. Social disorganization. This is a theory that says it's more sociology than psychology. Look at the neighborhood. Look at what these kids are going through. Look at the way that they are being raised, the people that they are around, the climate they come from, poverty, all of that. That is social disorganization. Strain. Similar to social disorganization, but more of an economic factor rather than just coming from a tough neighborhood. So what we're talking about here is you feel hopeless. Nothing I do is helping. I might as well steal. I might as well hurt people to get what I want. That's the theory of strain. So social disorganization says, look for bad neighborhoods. That's where you find juvenile delinquency. But strain, no, that says, kind of like the psychological theory of learned helplessness, that I just don't feel like it's ever going to get any better. I might as well do illegal things. Next theory, labeling. If I tell you you're a bad kid, you're going to act like a bad kid. You become the role that you are given. There are plenty of kids who buy into that because they are told that they're bad, so I might as well act like it. Family environment. This is interesting as a theory. It is not true that if you come from a divorced family or you have a single parent, single mom perhaps, that you are headed for a life of crime or juvenile delinquency. Instead, parental conflict and supervision. That is what we look at primarily. Do the parents fight with each other verbally or physically, or manipulation by using the kids? Is there a lack of supervision, whether it's intentional or not, that the kids basically get away with doing whatever they want to do? Nobody is watching them. So that and the parental discord, parental arguing, fighting, using the kids, all of that, those are the two factors, I should say, with regard to the family environment theory. Finally, last part of the juvenile delinquency section in your reading packet, prevention. There are 3 levels to prevention for juvenile delinquency. Primary, trying to not make you commit crimes before you could ever even start. The DARE program is one example of that. If we teach you enough about drugs and what could happen to you, maybe you won't want to use drugs. I've got bad news for you. Is anybody listening? Those programs do not usually work. If anything, you get kids more interested. Wow, that's what marijuana is. That's what cocaine is when you're teaching them at a young age. It would be nice if this kind of program, DARE and other programs, prevented juvenile delinquency. Doesn't usually happen. Secondary prevention. Kids that are already at risk. Are you shoplifting? Are you smoking weed? Gee, what if we locked you up for the weekend? What if we made you go through a diversion program? Maybe the problem would not get any worse. And tertiary is after the fact. So, you put kids in jail, not just for a weekend or overnight. It is a consequence. You expel them from school. You make them go to community work hours. It's punishment after the fact. Tertiary. Moving right along. Section 12, victimology. Victimology is actually a field of criminal justice and psychology where we look at who are the victims specifically. That's what victimology is all about. Understanding not only crime and what crimes are committed, but who exactly are the victims, who are more likely to be victims. So it's all about the statistics, the numbers. So here is what I want you to know. Page 61 in your reading packet, if you are following along. In the United States, the last time we did a census was 2010. There'll be another one in 2020 coming up. But there are other things other than just counting heads and counting people. Those are the years that we often do crime statistics too. And what we find in 2010, 21 million crimes per year on average. That's a lot. That's almost 1 out of every 10 people. About 1 out of every 14 people, actually, in the United States would be a victim of crime. You will notice on page 61, about, I don't know, 80% of them, a little bit more, are crimes against things rather than people. Property crimes. 16 million compared to almost 5 million. So that varies from year to year, but it's pretty darn close that the majority of them, 3/4 or more, are property crimes. The least likely victim, believe it or not, the elderly. You might be thinking, well, elderly people, they seem like they would be the most victimized because they don't fight back like other people would. Well, actually, elderly people take less chances. Going shopping, going to a movie, that might be the extent of when they actually leave the house and interact with people. The more that you're around crowds and big groups of people and at-risk situations, the more likely you are to be a victim. So, here's what we find. Victims are often more male than female. Victims are often more minorities than Caucasian people. This is especially true percentage-wise in the African American population. Also, age, younger people more than older people, and also income, low income people. So, I hope it doesn't sound like we're being prejudiced or biased in any way, but the most likely victim, a young black male living in a poor neighborhood. So, it's unfortunate. There's crime all over the place, but even more so in that demographic. That's on page 61 of your reading packet. Moving right along, page 62, and this is the last page. We do need to talk about rape and sexual assault and who are the victims. First of all, we don't actually know for sure. Rape and sexual assault, that has to be the category that is the most underreported. Someone breaks the windows in your car, of course you're going to call the police. But if you're the victim of a sexual assault or a rape, much more common that you would not let the authorities know out of fear of embarrassment. Nobody will believe you. You're going to have to go through the legal system too, and that's going to be very stressful. They might even make you seem like you deserved it. All kinds of horrible things happen to victims of sexual assault and rape that make them not want to come forward. So, 99% of offenders are male when it comes to sex crimes. That is absolutely alarming. This is much more of a male thing to do, to be the perpetrator, than females. Only 24% of the time it's a stranger. That means more than 3/4 of the time the perpetrator is somebody known to the victim. Nearly half, 47%, involve alcohol or drugs, and in 3/4 of those cases, the victim was doing the drugs or consuming the alcohol voluntarily. We never want to blame victims for anything, especially when it comes to rape and sexual assault. But that is just something to be aware of. Risks can be minimized when you either stay away from or minimize drugs and alcohol, especially large groups of people, people that you don't know very well. The world is a scary place, and all we can do is try to minimize some of the risk factors. Last thing is, you hear about crimes being committed, drive-by shootings, people at parks, people out for a walk, people on their bikes or jogging. Those are actually relatively rare. Only 3.6%, slightly less than 4%, of all rape cases involve outdoor activities or endeavors. Most of them happen in homes, in buildings, in school environments, in dorms. So, over 96% are within some kind of structure, building, or home, and less than 4% occur outdoors. So again, the exam number 3, sections 9, 10, 11, and 12. The videos are now ready for you, this one and the previous one, so that you can take that exam number 3 at any time. Use the passcode unexpected so you can get into the exam and take it. And on the next video, we will be ready for the next section of the reading packet, which is actually 2, number 13 and number 14. Until then, that's it for now.